Episode 149 of the Unrivaled Tang Sect. Busi dies in a self-detonation. Ye Xishui seizes the chance to harvest millions of souls, and the true mission of the 15 Titled Douluo turns out to be the abduction of a baby. Huo Yuhao led 15 Titled Douluo into the Sun Moon Empire. The operation to assassinate Xu Tianran officially began. That very moment, the empire's grand heaven worship ceremony was underway. Xu Tianran's eyes were filled with obsessive madness. He believed that in the future, he alone would control the entire continent and even the whole world. Standing atop the ceremonial altar, he spread his arms and looked up at the sky as though he had truly become master of all creation. Yet amid the sound of the ceremonial cannon fire, some sharp-minded people began to sense that something was wrong. In the eastern sky above Mingdu, faint flashes of light could still be seen. Xu Tianran, however, acted as if he had noticed nothing and continued performing the ritual bows toward the heavens. By then, some people in the crowd had already slipped away toward the eastern outskirts, where the Sun Moon Empire's largest arsenal was stored. Inside were devastating fixed-installed soul-guided cannon shells, the Empire's greatest trump card and deadliest strategic weapon. That very moment in the eastern outskirts, shell after shell was being fired from the void toward the arsenal. Huo Yuhao and Tang Wutong stood hand in hand on an open field, accompanied by 10 Titled Douluo-level powerhouses. According to the original plan, this round of bombardment was only a feint. Tianyang Douluo had already left first with the other Titled Douluo. Huo Yuhao remained behind to set timed high-explosive bombs in order to erase every trace they had left behind. Just then, a massive energy net descended from the sky. It was the Sun Moon Empire's linked capture-type soul tool. Huo Yuhao tightened his grip on Tang Wutong's hand, and the two of them simultaneously activated 9th-class flying soul tools. In an instant, they broke the sound barrier and shot forward like twin streams of light, escaping the range of the energy net in the blink of an eye. A few minutes later, they had already left the aerial detection coverage over Mingdu and landed on a hillside. But Huo Yuhao's eyes turned toward the southern outskirts, where the ceremony was being held. On the heaven worship platform, Xu Tianran had just finished reciting the ritual text and bowed once more when the sky suddenly darkened without warning. The bright sunlight vanished completely behind heavy storm clouds. Millions of citizens instantly fell into panic, and Xu Tianran's expression finally darkened as well. A deep, thunderous voice rang across all of Mingdu, accusing Xu Tianran of harboring monstrous ambition and declaring that justice would be carried out in heaven's name. A giant green figure, hundreds of feet tall, tore through the storm clouds and appeared in the sky. It was Busi, leader of the body sect. Xu Tianran immediately ordered the ceremonial altar's defensive barrier to be activated, protecting the imperial family and all the top officials. But at that same moment, brutal slaughter suddenly erupted around the altar. For Super Douluo, who had been hidden among the crowd, struck without warning, and in a very short time countless civilians were killed. Then Long Xiaoyao, the Dark Holy Dragon, appeared as well. He urged Busi to stop and not massacre innocent people. But Busi burst into laughter and furiously condemned him for aiding evil, for choosing a woman and allying himself with evil soul masters. As soon as he finished speaking, he ignited the fire of his own life. His enormous body swelled instantly to 300 feet tall, and his cultivation forcibly climbed beyond the level of an ultimate Douluo, even higher than that. He intended to detonate his soul core and die together with everyone present. From 100 li away, Huo Yuhao's face changed drastically the moment he saw this. At last, he understood why Busi had given him the body sect's secret manual earlier. He had long since prepared himself for death. But then an even more terrifying thought struck him. The Holy Ghost Church's techniques largely relied on resentful spirits and the undead. If Busi truly self-destructed, the souls of millions of living beings would only make the Holy Ghost Church stronger than ever before. Tang Wutong desperately tried to stop Huo Yuhao from rushing off to his death. But Huo Yuhao embraced her with deep emotion, used the power of sealing to immobilize her in place, then turned and became a streak of light, flying toward the southern outskirts with reckless determination. In the sky, Long Xiaoyao had already transformed into a black dark holy dragon over 500 meters long and begun a fierce battle with Du Busi. Empowered by the fire of his life, Du Busi attacked with terrifying ferocity and actually suppressed this true ultimate Douluo for a time. On the heaven worship platform, Xu Tianran's expression had already returned to calm. He ordered the high-energy beam defensive barrier to be prepared. The old man beside him strongly objected, saying that doing so would exhaust years of accumulated energy and interrupt critical research. It would be better, he argued, to let the Holy Ghost Church step in and help. Xu Tianran only sneered. The Holy Ghost Church, he said, had no intention of helping at all. They would love nothing more than for Du Busi to self-destruct so they could collect millions of souls and expand their own power. If that happened, the entire Sun-Moon Empire would eventually fall into the Holy Ghost Church's hands, and those research projects would never continue anyway. With no choice left, the old man turned to carry out the order. Juzi gently took Xu Tianran's hand, and Xu Tianran gripped hers tightly in return. On the surface he seemed composed, but the force in his hand was frightening. Long Xiaoyao let out a dragon's roar toward the heavens as if calling for help, yet there was no response in the sky. On the ground, the citizens had already completely lost control. Fortunately, large numbers of troops were maintaining order, preventing the chaos from becoming even worse. Meanwhile, in a distant hidden corner, Zhongli Wu, wrapped in a black robe, quietly asked Ye Xishui, who wore a blood-red robe beside him, whether they should go help Long Xiaoyao now. In a concealed location far away, Ye Xishui replied in a flat tone that the souls of the tens of thousands who had just died were only barely enough to make up for the earlier consumption of the Death God Tower. She had absolutely no reason to stop Du Busi. Long Xiaoyao was a smart man, she said. Once he realized the situation was beyond saving, he would naturally retreat on his own. Zhongli Wu did not dare say another word. Though he was nominally the leader of the Holy Ghost Church, everyone knew that Ye Xishui was the one who truly controlled everything. Ye Xishui's gaze rested calmly on the battle in the sky, with a faint blood-red light occasionally flickering in her eyes. Behind her stood a large number of Holy Ghost Church experts. From the moment Du Busi appeared, they had already gathered there, quietly waiting for the chance to reap the rewards. Of course, Ye Xishui knew that Long Xiaoyao had just been calling for her. She also knew that if she joined forces with him, they could certainly stop Du Busi from self-destructing. But in her eyes, the deaths of millions of civilians would only bring enormous benefit to the Holy Ghost Church. Why would she ever interfere with something so profitable? To her, everything in this world could be reduced to benefit and utility. Nothing else mattered. The battle in the sky grew more and more intense. The life fire burning from Du Busi had become so dense it was almost tangible. Under his frenzied assault, Long Xiaoyao was steadily pushed back and could only barely keep him from crashing down toward the ground. Du Busi laughed wildly and told Long Xiaoyao not to waste his breath calling for help. Ye Xishui would never come. Long Xiaoyao's heart stirred. Suddenly, he realized that Du Busi might not be as mad as he appeared. He urged him to stop, telling him that even if he self-destructed, he would not be able to kill Xu Tianran. The barrier over the Sun-Moon Heaven worship platform would absorb most of the explosion's power. In the end, only the Holy Ghost Church would benefit. If Du Busi stopped now, Long Xiaoyao said, he would help extinguish the fire of his life and even help him leave safely. Du Busi only laughed even harder. In a voice only the two of them could hear, he told Long Xiaoyao that he understood all of that. They were both men who had lived for more than 200 years. How could he have failed to think of what Long Xiaoyao could think of? The difference was simply that they stood on opposite sides and believed in different things. Du Busi admitted that ever since the fall of the Heavenly Soul Empire, when he had fought the Sun-Moon Empire's army with all his strength, his origin had been damaged beyond healing. He was too old and his strength had been declining all the while. Most, he had only 10 years left to live. Rather than linger on in misery, he would rather die gloriously under the eyes of all and end his life with thunderous finality. Du Busi then told Long Xiaoyao that everything he had done today had been part of a carefully prepared plan. He would not die for nothing. He had deliberately attacked civilians because he had calculated that Xu Tianran would stop at nothing to protect the people. Otherwise, the very foundation of his rule would be shaken. That meant the Sun Moon Empire would be forced to use many of its hidden trump cards and suffer a severe depletion of strength. In the future, its power to invade the three nations of Douluo continent would be greatly reduced. That was his first objective. His second objective was to pin down Long Xiaoyao. He knew Long Xiaoyao still had a conscience and would definitely come to stop him. His third objective was to draw out Ye Xishui and the Holy Ghost Church, forcing all of the Sun Moon Empire's most powerful factions into mutual restraint so they could not interfere with his real goal. And he himself had a fourth objective, to personally assassinate Xu Tianran. Whether he succeeded or not, he had to try. Otherwise, he would die with everlasting regret. Du Busi added that this operation was not his alone. He had already drawn all the enemy's attention to himself. The rest of the mission would naturally be completed by others. Hearing all this, Long Xiaoyao was filled with sorrow. Another powerhouse from his own era was about to fall. Du Busi cast one last look at Long Xiaoyao, suddenly burst into wild laughter, and then floated motionless in the air. In that instant, all the energy fluctuations across the sky seemed to freeze. Even Long Xiaoyao was temporarily restrained by that power. Xu Tianran, standing inside the golden barrier, was also affected by the terrifying force of Du Busi's soul core, but he still managed to support himself and walk once more onto the heaven worship platform. He raised his right hand and pointed it toward the sky, proclaiming that he was chosen by destiny, that he would borrow the power of the 9 heavens to suppress evil and let the light of the sun-moon shine eternally upon the earth. As his words fell, golden light burst from Xu Tianran's body, and a streak of purple lightning shot forth from within him. He raised his long sword high and made a drawing motion through the air. In the distance, the 4 white pillars of light that had previously shot into the clouds suddenly raced toward the ceremonial platform. They interwove into a massive white barrier in the sky, covering millions of civilians below and nearly half of Mingdu. Almost at the very same instant that the barrier formed, the emerald green soul core containing all of Du Busi's cultivation and life force crashed downward toward the sun-moon heaven worship platform. The sky instantly fell into boundless darkness. Only countless stars glittered within it. The gigantic white light curtain began to tremble violently. For the first time, a look of true shock appeared in Xu Tianran's eyes. He immediately released his purple brilliance heaven-extinguishing dragon martial soul. 9 soul rings lit up one by one behind him, and a majestic purple dragon coiled into existence. The emperor of the Sun-Moon Empire, only in his 30s, was himself actually a titled Douluo-level powerhouse. Even so, despite going all out, he could not withstand the impact that struck from the deepest level of the soul. Pure will formed from Du Busi's lifelong obsession pierced through both layers of defense and struck directly into Xu Tianran's spiritual sea. Xu Tianran suddenly spat out a large mouthful of blood. His body went limp, and he slowly collapsed onto the heaven worship platform. Juzi was the first to rush to his side. She quickly realized that Xu Tianran's injury had not come from the explosion itself, but from that indestructible spiritual will. If Xu Tianran had not been a titled Douluo himself, that single blow would probably have destroyed both soul and spirit. Gradually, the storm clouds dispersed and sunlight once more spread across the earth. Long Xiaoyao had already vanished without a trace. In the distance, Huo Yuhao watched all of this with grief filling his eyes. He bowed deeply toward the sky and silently vowed that he would pass on the secrets of the body sect, and that he would make sure to receive the others safely. Tang Wudong came to his side and took his hand, telling him that no matter what happened in the future, he must never leave her behind again. The two looked at one another, then flew together toward the rendezvous point in the eastern outskirts. Du Busi's self-destruction had drawn all of Mingdu's attention. Now was the best possible time to withdraw. When they reached the meeting point, for titled Douluo were already waiting there, each wearing an extremely grave expression. A quarter of an hour later, Tianyang Douluo returned with the rest of the group. In his arms, he held a small bundle. The moment he landed, he urged everyone in a deep voice to leave at once. Mingdu was already under complete lockdown. Huo Yuhao immediately spread his spiritual detection sharing and led the group into the air. But at that very moment, a stunned look appeared on his face. He could clearly hear 17 heartbeats. There was one more than there should have been. His spiritual power instantly probed the bundle in Tianyang Douluo's arms, and he discovered that inside was a sleeping infant. In that instant, Huo Yuhao understood everything. This operation had never truly been about assassinating Xu Tianran at all. The real objective was to abduct the Sun Moon Empire's crown prince, Xu Yunhan. Busi had used his life to draw away all the core forces, creating the opportunity for Tianyang Douluo and the others to infiltrate the imperial palace. Huo Yuhao felt suffocated by disgust and heaviness. 15 of the continent's most powerful titled Douluo had actually laid hands on a child not even 2 years old. In his mind, he could already see what Juzi would look like when she learned the truth, utterly shattered with grief. At the same time, inside the imperial palace of Mingdu, Juzi received the news that the crown prince had vanished. The woman who had remained calm even in the face of the explosion and her husband's severe injuries broke down instantly. She rushed madly toward her chambers, completely stripped of her former composure. Half an hour later, Xu Tianran awoke from unconsciousness. Though he had survived, his soul had suffered irreversible damage. When he learned that the crown prince had been abducted, his eyes filled with venomous killing intent. He hated not only the people of the body sect but also the Holy Ghost Church for standing by and doing nothing. Juzi knelt before him, tears streaming down her face as she begged him to find some way to save their son. But Xu Tianran coldly told her that those people had abducted the crown prince in order to stop him from launching war. If he could father one heir, he could father another. Not only would he not compromise, he would immediately take command of the armies and launch all-out war against the 3 nations of Douluo continent, using the blood of all their people to mourn the lost prince. Juzi could hardly believe what she was hearing. She screamed hysterically in opposition to Xu Tianran's decision. A savage gleam flashed through Xu Tianran's eyes. He suddenly thrust out his hand and seized Juzi by the throat. A cold, murderous aura flooded the entire room. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. Your support really helps the channel grow and means a lot to me.